Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bayview Podcast. My name is Andrew. I'm one of your hosts, joined as always by Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Hello, everybody. Good to have you with us today. Good to be here today. So I'm doing good, man. It's been a good day. We've had a busy day here, even prepping up to this. We've had some other filming and recordings going on for some other projects. So, yeah, it's been a good day.
Always a good time.
Always good. Always something going on, man.
Yeah,
it's always something going on.
That's good. Yeah, there's most days I feel like we show up and we're like, all right, got a couple things to do. And like, and I guess I'll do those things tomorrow because something else came up and that's ministry though.
I totally, well, especially on, so like this, as we're recording, it's Tuesday. So we record on Tuesdays typically. And Tuesdays are definitely that way where I actually intentionally come in on Tuesdays with zero expectations to accomplish what's on my to-do list.
Yeah, that's wise.
Because it's just never going to happen on a Tuesday. Between meetings and production, just a lot going on.
Yeah, that's wise.
So then I'm not frustrated. But no, it's good.
I respect that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting. I hope you guys are enjoying what we're doing with this podcast right now because we're using this as a chance to go a little bit deeper. I told somebody today, it's kind of like this is like a Revelation deep dive, based on where we were on Sunday. And so Sunday, Andrew, you preached and just killed it and talked about what we'll talk about here in a little bit, 17, 18, a little bit in 19. But I was always receiving encouraging comments and statements. But I had a really cool convo with someone who just was like so appreciative that we're doing this on our podcast. And it happened to be your mom.
Oh, cool.
So your mom was here Sunday, and she was just expressing how much she has looked forward to the podcasts during. She loves them all. Yeah, I think it's because you're her son. She has to.
Sure.
But she was just talking about how good that's been, and I don't know how it's for you. I've looked forward to our time here, just sitting down. Let's talk about what happened Sunday, where we were, and what do we still need to unpack? What do we still need to kind of go deeper on, and just even have conversations of things that we're not really sure.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. I think the chance to maybe share a little more than we probably could have taught. I think I tried to say it on Sunday, like we're really taking the 10,000 foot view.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we could go chapter by chapter. We could go verse by verse. We could be in this book for months. And so with us taking kind of a wider scope view, it's like you said, Sunday was 2 chapters and even a little into a third. I'm not really scratching the surface on what's in there. No. We're on Sunday giving some main themes and hopefully encouraging. So this has been good to maybe flesh some things out more. Maybe there's a point that was made that needed even more context or further conversation. And so I think it's been really good. And it's kept the studying up. I've appreciated where like on Sundays, one of the Sundays I wasn't able to be here. So it's like I watched you online and then able to sit down and actually talk to you about it. It was like I was learning still in that mode. So that's been cool. So I've appreciated this time and these conversations.
And I'm wondering too, like, and this isn't a dig on any church or anybody that's doing a much deeper dive. Like I know we have some good friends of ours, their church is doing Revelation and they're going much deeper into it. They're going like till next March, which is, I trust them fully. They're doing a killer job. I don't know, for me as I read through it, I think like, man, it feels like so much of this still, we just don't know. So I feel like I'd almost be ending most of my messages of like, well, we think this might be what it means, but we really don't know.
Sure.
And that's how a lot of Revelation is. Mm-hmm. But what we do know is the message that's given to the churches that started this book out, which is also then given to us as the church. And so, I don't know. I don't know where that happy medium is. I think it's a book that warrants a tremendous amount of deep study individually. And I'm just glad that we're doing this because our goal has been, maybe it's taking a little bit of the fear and making it approachable for you to be like, let me dig in there and let me be comfortable with realizing that a lot of this we're not going to understand.
Yeah, it's good.
The word mystery is used multiple times in here, and sometimes in fact, even in these passages you preached on, it says, let's reveal the mystery. I get in reading that part, I'm like, okay, it's still a mystery.
Would they reveal?
Yeah. It's still, it's like when a magician shows you how he did his trick. I'm like, I'm just as confused. So, but anyway, it's good. So I'm enjoying. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning and just loving this dive into it
For sure.
and finding encouragement and inspiration through this awesome book. So we hope you are too. So anyway, that being said, we'll just kind of dive on in, and go ahead and set us up. Tell us, kind of give us the overview. Where'd you take us Sunday? What chapters did you hit? And where are we at right now?
Yeah, Sunday was 17, 18, like you said, a little bit of 19 of Revelation. And the big thing we hit on in these chapters is this woman, and she's riding this beast. And it feels like it's leading into the Armageddon, the Great War.
Right.
Like we're heading that direction. But First John witnesses this woman, which the scripture referred to as a prostitute. Like there's this imagery used. And I talked a little bit Sunday, and I thought it was important. And we've actually hit on it before. But like John using that language was done on purpose.
Yep.
Like John wasn't trying to be like provocative. Like
Right.
I even think like a Paul, he uses some language in his writing. And when you just read it as is, like just read a random verse and it might say something in it, you're like, wow, he was just trying to be this like
Shock theology,
shock and all pastor or whatever. And it's like, then you read it in context, you're like, oh, okay, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's what John's doing here. So by using the word prostitute or harlot or whatever he's using to describe this woman, like the apocalyptic literature that we're reading, that is the book of Revelation, it should make us cringe.
Yeah.
And because all of a sudden you get all these images in your head and all these thoughts, but then when you start understanding why he's using that, and what we get to really see is this abomination, more or less, this woman riding this beast of a thing, and all it's meant to do is to take our focus and our affection, and it's representing this, like the great temptation. It's representing everything that is built when people build something in rebellion to God.
Yep.
We refer to it as Babylon. We can get into that too a little bit, but Babylon, named after the city Babel, like that was a city built by people who thought they could be better gods than God. Like, so she really was this great representation of rebellion.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, again, you're spot on. He intentionally uses the word prostitute, or in some translations, whore or harlot.
Yeah.
Which in first century culture was very well known.
Yep.
They knew what a prostitute was as much as we know what a prostitute is now.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, okay, so what was he trying to convey with that message, with that wording?
Sure.
There was a purpose, saying, okay, in fact, some ways maybe to look at it, he'd be like, so this is like a prostitute representing Babylon. So it's like a prostitute that you would understand in real life. And so everything about a prostitute is, it's detestable. It's something that you would not associate yourself with. And yet behind the scenes in the dark, unspeakable alleys, it's something that tempts and pulls people in.
Yeah.
And she offers, or it offers a taste of something that's not real.
Yeah, that's good. Yep.
So like, and I'm speculating obviously, but it's like, we know how that goes. It's not real love. It feels like love. It's not real making love as God, created sex to be. It's like that. It's not real affection. It's like that. Yeah.
The language I use is it takes sex, it takes love, and makes it something to consume. And we can stop thinking about the soul,
right?
Thinking about the person, which is what intimacy is really supposed to draw two together.
Great word. Yes, I'm glad you said that.
And instead, it just makes it something to consume quickly, which fits culture. Culture is a consumption-based thing. We're jumping to the end, but it's like I use this idea of what John is ultimately pushing us towards is that we would live a life upside down. We did a whole series called Upside Down, talked about the Beatitudes. I highly recommend going back and listening to. We do a deep dive into all that, but it almost like he's pointing back to the teachings of Jesus that says like everything she represents is in response or in rebellion to what Jesus taught. Yeah. So we're taught to live generously through Christ. Yeah. She is the representation of consumption. Yep. what can I get from you?
Yep. And for my own personal gratification right now, it's a quick fix version of intimacy.
And we're taught to be peacemakers, and instead it's like she represents what violence can get you and what it means to be powerful and authoritative through violence. Or we're taught to be hospitable and to love, and she represents hate and self-focus. And and so it's like you really have this balance, and you talked about it a little bit with Revelation 12, 13, 14, where we get to see the Antichrist, and we see all these things that basically form the anti-Trinity, like again,
the unholy
opposite.
Trinity.
And so she kind of represents the culmination of that almost.
Yeah.
So
she's the sexy front end of that is appealing, because that's what it is. It sucks you in, even though you know it shouldn't. I'm almost wondering if, like in today's culture, again, this not to go down this path necessarily. This isn't the sex and purity talk, but it almost be like if you're writing to us today, instead of a prostitute, you might be more inclined to say it's like the pornography website.
Yeah.
It's like the pornography of Babylon, where how many people are completely consumed by that, even though they know it's eating them from the inside out. But it offered something that seemed harmless and quick and felt good for a minute, and it's like that. And I think that's what he's saying. Like, listen, this is how dangerous this is of what Babylon is representing. Yeah. And I think then that's where you took us down that path. He's using the term Babylon on purpose because it'd be familiar to the reader. Yep. But what was he really saying? Like, and I know we don't know. What does it seem like he's really saying?
Yeah, I really fell into the camp that I John has to be reminded to take his eyes off her. Mm-hmm. So I think that was something that really stuck out to me. Is like there's an angel there, literally telling him to not look at her, because it says he's astonished. So I really believe it's John warning the church on, hey, you got to be aware of this, whether this is a governmental structure under the Antichrist in the future, or it really is. You have to be aware of putting your faith, your trust, your hope, your ideas, you're putting anything of that into something that is hollow or ultimately false and away from God. That's why I use that language, our affection and our focus. When that's removed from Christ and placed into something else, that's what this woman represents, because ultimately she consumes herself. She's consumed by the beast. It burns. It's like it all falls apart.
Yeah.
It's empty promises. So it's another layer. It's like it is to be aware of the temptation that is really anything that's not God.
Yeah.
And that was something I really found myself spending a lot of time on. I felt like Sunday teaching was just this idea of like, we got to be aware and ultimately like live intentionally then.
That's good. Yeah. And I think, when we look through a lot of the different commentaries and basically trying to do our best to understand what's being said, because again, this continues to go back to the book of Revelation is a letter written not to us, but written for us, written to the 7 churches and for the church today, for each of us. We have to keep looking through it like, okay, so let's go back to those 5 rebukes at the beginning. Like he starts there, be like, here's the 5 rebukes. Therefore, it's like all this other stuff. This is what's coming. So how do we go back? And one of those early rebukes is like, listen, you've lost the love you had at first. Yeah. And there's 2 levels that goes. Obviously, you've lost the way you love each other, but ultimately the way we love each other is driven by this deep committed love to Him. And Him as our only love, Him as our one and only focus, and again, now we're back to the prostitute, right? Marriage is destroyed by prostitution of something, another sexual outlet that is meant for just a spouse, a man and a woman. And so now I almost feel like God's saying, like, listen, this is how this looks. You're going to be tempted to turn your attention and your affection and your loyalties and all of these, your allegiance to something other than me. And the reason John can't look away is because it looks really good. Yeah.
It's or when something's wrong and you shouldn't look, and so you're side-eyeing it. You're still looking. Yeah. You're still engaging in what is wrong. Yeah. That's the temptation factor, right? That's the asking the question. Like, no one wakes up one day and says, let's destroy my life today. Yeah. Yeah. But somehow we still end up destroying our lives, and it's like, well, how? It's the little incremental temptations. There's a little bit of ease offered. There's something there that's like, I can handle this. I can deal with it. And before long, you've side-eyed it enough, and now you're just staring it straight in the face while you fall flat on your face.
Yeah.
And it's like that. That's what I think that's what she represents.
Yeah, I think so too. So then Babylon, different schools of thought. It seems definitely to represent a human form of governance, of government or governments. I've read different write-ups on it and different things of what it could be saying. I fall in the camp that I think it definitely refers to. I feel like it's referring to what we've just talked about right before this, and that is that the Antichrist comes and sets up this government, and because the beast has 10 crowns, and it seems to suggest an evil union of government rule that takes place during the tribulation. Yeah. I feel like that's what it's talking about. I know others maybe have a little bit of a twist. What are your thoughts? Do you feel that? I mean, I think there's some levels out there where people are like, no, it's referring to specific countries. I know people have tried to figure out, like, here's what it's talking about, because it says there's 7 countries and one now and one to come. And I don't think it's doing that necessarily. But
I look at it, kind of goes back to almost day one where we said it has to make sense to the readers,
right,
who were receiving the letter, where it's like, I think initially they could see Rome, because Rome's the beast right in their face, and there's 7 crowns, and I think I talked on Sunday, there's 7 mountains that Rome is situated in, and so they, like, right away they're going to at least resonate with Rome. But then the name Babylon is on her forehead,
right? And
Babylon did represent this place that the powerful wanted to be. It was this like thing grander than Rome.
Yeah.
So I think I fell into the camp that I didn't want to label it as a specific country. I think it's the idea of something that's good, that seems good, that is powerful, that is going to keep you safe, that's going to provide if you just accepted it, right?
Yeah.
That was the whole idea. Even with the Roman, the Caesars of Rome were just kind of like, why won't the Christians get on board with this? Mm-hmm. All they got to say is we're in, and they'll be good. And it's like, obviously Rome's not around anymore, right?
Yeah.
And like, obviously Babylon, then this creature falls apart. So I think it represents more or less maybe a government, some sort of structure, some sort of thing that, which, so again, it might be a country, it might be something like that, that represents something that we would put our trust in.
Yeah.
Our hope and our faith in.
I think that's good. I think that's the perfect way to look at it right there. And if it is, and if it is something that is under this Antichrist, I mean, obviously he comes selling something in the end times. He and the false prophet, empowered by the dragon, they're selling something that deceives a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where, like, again, to your initial question of, like, I think to them they could picture Rome or they could picture Babylon. Yeah. We're the same way we're trying to picture this country or that country. I think it would have made sense to them in that time because of, like, oh yeah, we're being destroyed by this. Right. And if I just said I'm good and I believe it, then I would survive. Yeah. And so I think you're right, where, like, there's almost this idea of, like, what are they, where now for us, I'll say it that way, for us, it's like, I think it's just something to be aware of more than anything. I think it's going to be something that's going to come in the future that maybe we're here for, maybe we're not, that I think is going to, like the mark of the beast, like other stuff, we're going to knowingly make the decision to put our hope and trust and faith in it.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the Bible kind of even lays that out, that there's going to be this knowing, this conscious choice. You're choosing something other than God. Yeah. But I do think that even now, and I think this is where the here and now part of the book comes into play, is we're practicing what we're going to eventually do. Yeah. And I think there's so many people now that love Jesus, go to church, they're Christians, they're saved, however you want to say it. But if they're honest, they don't sleep better at night knowing God's on the throne. They sleep better at night when government's in order the way they think it should be, or when the economy is where they think it should be, or when they're still finding, we all are, like, and Jesus knows that's who we were. That's why he tells us in Matthew 5, he hits the whole worry button. Hey, dude, don't worry about tomorrow. What are you doing? Yep. You can't affect it. You cannot add a single day. your worry has no power.
Yeah.
And but so what do we do with our worry? We still look to things we understand, things we can control, and things that maybe we even can grasp. I don't know. But I still think so many of it, and we've felt it over the last few months with a lot of political angst and uncertainties, and it's certainly not over. It's not done to those feelings. But I almost fear now that we may be coming to a season where there's this great level, and I shared this a little bit on Sunday. I fear there may be this great level of followers of Jesus taking a big exhale now they're on the other side of these elections and thinking like, good, it's all done, we won, it's good, well done, let's just relax. And somehow thinking that somehow this had something to do with what the Bible's talking about. In reality, in some ways, it is this prostitution to what seems good.
Yeah.
And what seems right. And it's like, I remember chaos that we've seen in the church in the past years after different elections have gone other directions. And those that would be in that conservative camp, they're all up in arms, and there's fear, and there's all these doomsdayers. I remember that. Oh my goodness. Like they call it the Chicken Little syndrome. A bunch of people run around, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. It's like, the sky has always been falling. Like this has never been our source of peace and our source of security and hope. Yeah. And yet it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to live it.
Yeah, that's good.
And it feels like that's where the prostitution of Babylon is coming in, where this horror is coming in. And yeah, I agree with you. I think this is what's coming. This isn't here now. I'm not going to jump.
But the temptations now.
The temptations.
Like
now.
the temptation and the ability to slip and become easily distracted, or again have your focus and affection taken off Christ. Well, of course, it's a possibility right here, right now.
And if we can't stand up to it when the issues have to do with how much is a gallon of milk, how are we going to stand up to it when the issue is your very life?
Yeah.
Or the wages, a whole day's wages just to buy a loaf of bread, just to keep it in the economic realm.
Yeah.
It's like, we're being tested now, and now we're going back to a lot of Paul's writings of like, listen, these testing, these trials, they give you endurance. Well, what do you think we're needing endurance for?
Yeah.
Eventually, the Christians on earth are going to need the endurance to endure these end times.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not even saying we're not in them. I'm not saying we are. I'm saying I'm not pre-trib, post-trib. I'm trib. There is a tribulation coming. There is a second coming of Jesus Christ. There is all of this is coming. Yeah. Beyond that, we just don't know.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. We're being tested now.
Yeah.
And we're being tempted now.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I think is. That to me was the message of this whole section, was like you just have to be aware.
Yeah.
Like if you're a follower of Jesus, you're called to a certain way of life and have a certain focus and a certain view. And really this woman represents, and I refer to it as the bait and switch. She represents the what you want. It's like almost like I saw someone talk about like the wealthy and how no one who's just aggressively wealthy is ever truly satisfied. Like there really isn't a number you can put on wealth that all of a sudden someone's like, okay, now I can breathe.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like there's still this unsatisfaction, this idea of there's got to be more, and it's like, but there's this temptation to like lean into it and pursue that and desire that, and that becomes your God, your idol is wealth. And again, no one would say you're wrong for wanting to be financially stable for your family, but if that's your focus, like that is something that could eventually fall and collapse, and it's taking your focus and your affection off of Christ.
Totally.
And I think that's what for me was so eye-opening in studying this, of like, it isn't the dramatic, it isn't the obvious, it's going to be something I'm choosing to do consciously or subconsciously. I'm choosing to do, and it could jack this whole thing up.
Well, we know how it ends, right? We know. I mean, I was looking in chapter 18, verse 9 says, "And the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just envisioning, the groups of people who have sought all of their purpose and fulfillment and meaning in something the world offered, maybe in this world's material things, the world's, safety, the world's power, fame, whatever it may be. Just like staying at a distance, watching just this scorched earth scene as smoke coming up from the skeletal remains of the buildings, and it brings that end of earth, doomsday kind of vibe a little bit. But I think he's saying, like, listen, there's going to come a day where you're going to realize the prostitute was just that. Yeah. It wasn't real.
Yeah, it's what could you do for me? Which again is a total rejection of the way of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, we're called to serve.
Totally.
And in this one, all we're seeing is they're mourning because, there goes our wealth and our thought of power. And and but we see it like that was even on Sunday. I read from 19:1-4, which basically just still reminds us that he wins.
Yep.
There's always this constant reminder of, like, it's pointing back to we know the ending. I think, and we don't have to go deep into that because you're going to talk about this Sunday. But just that they're on it, he wins it.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and they say that multiple times through the book.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times? In fact, you reread it again Sunday. How many times do the 24 elders fall on their face and worship?
Yeah.
And the four beings worshiping him, because it's like they start that way, and then it's like, okay, all this bad, but worship, 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 because God wins.
Yeah.
Bowls, trumpets, seals, 7 terrible, all these terrible things. But stop, worship, acknowledge God wins. Prostitute, Babylon falls and burns, its charred remains. But stop and worship, God wins. It's like it's this constant theme through the Bible. And I think that's where, when some people say the book of Revelation is a book of encouragement, if you haven't read it, you would be like, that doesn't make any sense at all. It's all terrible things. No, it's saying in the face of terrible things, don't lose sight of the one most important message over and over and over and over: God wins, God wins, God wins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we look at it. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more, because we do this next week go into the Battle of Armageddon, and then the 1,000 years millennium, and then another battle, and we'll pick out we'll pick out a little bit what we understand, because the bulk of that we just don't get. But again, it doesn't change the theme. God wins. Yeah. God wins. God wins.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, as believers, we're called to come out of her. Like, that is really what it is. Like, we're called to, that's 18:4. Like, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, that you will not receive any of her plagues. And it goes on for those verses, and just as a reminder of, like, she's going to be judged. She's going to be found guilty. She's going to get what she deserves. There's no blessings found in her. There really is nothing there for you.
Nope.
And that was just for me, that was such a great reminder. Like, it was almost like that's like the thing I want to remind myself when I'm tempted of, like, there's nothing of value actually here for me.
Which means there's nothing that we lose that has value.
Yeah.
Worldly. And this call to come out, I mean, this isn't new. I mean, if you want to just paint, you look at the broader contextual scope of this is yet another call to holiness. Because to be holy is to be set apart. We're told to, be in this world, but you're not of this world. Don't conform to this world. Over and over again, all the messages throughout the Scripture of, like, hey, listen, don't get suckered into it. Don't get sucked into this into this counterfeit version. Yeah. Be holy because I'm holy. So God is saying, like, listen, I'm holy. I'm apart from all of this. If you're mine, be away from it with me. And that's what it's saying there. Is like, hey, get away from her, and she's become a home for demons. She's a hideout for every foul spirit. So it's just saying, get away from her. Don't take part in her sins, or you'll be punished with her. Don't get near it.
Yeah.
And I had somebody after one of the services Sunday, after your message, say, like, well, so how do we know? Like how do we know, what the prostitute is? How do we know what all this lie is? And it kind of goes back to what we talked about a little bit last week, even of, like, well, the way you know the counterfeit is to be super educated in the truth.
Yeah.
If you know the real thing so much, so well, you'll know when it's fake.
Yeah, 100%.
And I instantly started thinking of, this is super shallow and not deep at all, but I started thinking to any time I see a movie that portrays a soccer game, and I'm always like, this is the worst version of what a soccer game really is, because I played a lot of soccer. I coached a lot of soccer. I know the real thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just watched that, or maybe you're football or whatever it is. Like, you watch the movie versions, like, that is so fake.
Yeah.
That's so not real. And the only reason I know that is because I know what the real is.
Yeah.
And I think in this is like, listen, we can't tell you exactly what this is going to look like. Because as we've said before, this isn't going to probably be dragons. It's like an actual red dragon coming out of the sea. That would be pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Right? Like, I think if I saw that, a 7-headed dragon with 10 horns and all, I'd be like, that looks like something out of Revelation. I bet that might be it. I am 88% sure that's it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's going to be something that looks real, smells real, tastes real. It's going to be enticing. Deep down, you'll know. But the only way deep down you'll know is if you are so close to what's real. Mm-hmm. And you touched on it a little bit Sunday. I'm going to go a little further with this statement you made Sunday, and that is nobody just naturally drifts toward God.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't naturally drift toward God. And so that means that the only alternative is to have a plan to get closer to God, to be intentional with it. And so you're not going to just naturally, I don't think you'll just naturally see it coming unless you have really spent your time knowing more of him. And that's all he really ever asks of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for that in context too, it's like, I do believe in like the radical transformation of people's lives. I do believe like you can just meet Jesus in your room without a Bible. I was more pointing to like, okay, you've become a believer. The idea of like, well, now I'm perfect. Now I don't have to care. It's like, that's why we're called to a relationship, which takes the effort, which takes the, it doesn't have to do with your salvation. It's just this idea of like, I need to pursue Christ still. Yeah. And when I'm not pursuing it, I'm just sitting back and resting on my laurels, and like that whole idea of like, again, I'm just going to kind of coast through life. Yes. Then that is why temptation and stuff still exists, because we are fallen. Yep. And our flesh will naturally just drift, just to be tossed to and fro by the waves out to the sea. Totally. Not to the safety of shore, but out to sea. Yep. And yeah, it's, we naturally just drift towards things that are old habits, old temptations, new things that seem shiny and bright. Like it's everything that's not Jesus. Yeah. That's what it tends to be.
It's funny. So I think it was last week or the week before, my son was telling me that they caught my 3-year-old grandson sneaking cookies. And he would sneak to the pantry and get one cookie and just hide it in his hand and try and sneak by them. And he actually was very successful. Apparently he ate like most of the pack of cookies before he got caught. But what a great lesson in that. Like, it's not like my son and his wife ever sat him down and be like, okay, Jace, this is how you steal a cookie. Yeah. Yeah. Let me teach you how to do wrong. Yeah. It's what we know. Yeah. It's what our nature is. Yep. And the only alternative is to fight against that nature and to find transformation through Jesus Christ. Yep. And then to pursue him, casting off our old selves, casting off our old sins, and pursuing him. Yeah, that's good. And I think that's what this call to us now is. Yeah. Whether we're in the end times or not, we're being tested and tempted of where's our loyalty, where's our allegiance, where are we seeking the truth versus what looks like the truth, or feels like the truth. Yeah, that's good. And I think that's so much of what this message is about in preparation, because we don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a very good chance that we wake up tomorrow and somehow there's worldwide peace, and all of a sudden there's like this government union of nations, and we start. I don't know. We kick it off. Here we go. We could wake up tomorrow and the tribulation happens, and we're boom, blink of an eye, all the believers are gone, and I don't know. We're told we won't know. It'll be like a thief in the night. It just happens. Yeah. Until then, man, here's your constant practice run, your constant go. Mm-hmm. I think you talked about Sunday. It's like it's game scenario practice.
Yeah, it's like we the pressure that the world gets put under, like that reveals character. It shows what's made of you. And so we're taught as coaches to then teach our players pressure situations so that when the pressure arises, they can rise to the top. And it's like that reminder of like, it's the same thing. Like when there's pressure in this world, God is showing us like what is really underneath it all, and that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna be in a constant 2-minute drill and see what we're really about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, obviously, let's be clear, Satan is at work now.
Yeah.
You know, he's prowling like a lion waiting to devour.
Yeah.
Sin is at power. Sin is in power. Sin is at work, you know, trying to pull people away. This is being played out in the early days. I mean, people are being tempted. People are walking away from their faith and denying God. I mean, this is happening. They're choosing things other than God, or they're not choosing God, which means they're choosing not God. It's happening now.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think that is our call to awaken, church, to be awakened and to be aware and be intentional about our pursuit of more Jesus and only Jesus.
Yeah.
And letting everything else be put aside.
Yeah. It's intentional living, like you said.
It's intentional
That's really
living.
what it is.
Absolutely. So cool. Well, hey, this next week we're going to jump in, and like I said, we're going to go a little further. If you want to read ahead, we're going to be in chapters, the back half of 19 and into 20, and go to look at the Battle of Armageddon and some of those things. Again, spoiler alert, God wins. So don't come to church and be shocked. Don't gasp when I say that Sunday. Be like, you're kidding me. I did not see that coming.
Wild.
God, what in the world? So anyway, hey, if you haven't done so already, click subscribe. That'll help you always find the newest episode. It should pop right up, whatever platform you're listening on. We're going to be here next week, as we are every week. Appreciate your time. Thanks for spending this little bit of moment with us. And until next week, it's Chris, it's Andrew. We're out of here, and we'll see you next time around.
Let's go.